effects of the Green Revolution, in which we have seen that increase in production. It is the production in agriculture sector increased a lot with the Green Revolution. What it is, India turned to self-sufficient in food grains, right? Our India turned to self-sufficient in food grains that we have seen, or not, which is what you call India was insufficient in food grains. With the Green Revolution, it turned to self-sufficient. What that? Self-sufficient instead. It means the food grains are sufficient for our India, right? It means what it means, that is what India has become self-sufficient in food grains instead. Then second is that it is the food grains increased from 51 millions to 253 millions, the second point that we have seen, right? It is what that 253 million tons instead. 253 million tons, that is the second point we have seen. It was 5 times increasement, right, in the food grains production over 5 decades. 5 times food grains increased, that is 51 million tons to 253 million tons, right, that we have seen. And to store these large stock of food grains, our government established FCI, that is Food Corporation of India instead. And food grains stock in 1967, that was 19 lakhs. How much? 19 lakhs. And that also increased here, right? It means food grains stock with FCI by 1961 was 91 lakhs, and that increased to what you call it is from 19 lakhs, it was 19 lakhs, increased to 220 lakhs. How much it is? 220 lakhs. Look at here. This is the amount I want to show you. Understand what that, 220 lakhs. Look at instead. How much? 220 lakhs instead. 220 lakhs. So here we see that it is 220 lakhs is a increasement with the stock of food grains with the FCI. Okay, that is also one achievement. So here the Green Revolution. Okay, here the Green Revolution helped the farmers to produce higher quantities of food grains and non-food grains on the same plot. Though there was no major increase in the land usage. By 1960, farmers were able to produce 287 kilograms of food grains, if it is a paddy or wheat, on 1 acre of cultivable land, that today increased to 800 kilograms. In 1960, there, what to call, in 1960, there it was 287 kilograms of food grains were produced on 1 acre of the land. On the same 1 acre of the land today, 800 kilograms of food grains are produced. So the net increase in the food grains is due to the green revolution. So we says that green revolution have contributed for increasing the production of food grains in India from 1950 and 51 to 2014 and 2015, right? This is a thing we see. Second is environmental effects. Understand what is the effect of the green revolution on environment, right? It is the green revolution, right? The green revolution have brought several environmental problems which we discussed earlier. Okay, let us see that what are the environmental problems created with the green revolution. One is it in the states like especially in the North Indian states, that is Punjab, Haryana, and some parts of Uttar Pradesh. Instead, there we see that water problem started in Punjab, Haryana, Punjab, Haryana, and parts of Uttar Pradesh. There, understand? What do we see? It is what that water problem started. Understand? In Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana. Understand? There we see the water problem started. Look at here. What the problem they faced in Punjab and Haryana? Understand? Right? That is in the northern states. That is Punjab, Haryana, and some parts of Uttar Pradesh. In these states, most of the farmers have shifted in using HYV seeds. Which seeds? HYV seeds instead, right? And these HYV seeds need a plenty of water. And here in these states, for irrigation, they extracted groundwater with the tube wells. Tube wells are used for providing irrigation to the rice and wheat. So HYV seeds need a plenty of water. There in these states, they increased, that means they arranged number of tube wells in a year. Over the years, number of tube wells increased in Punjab, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh instead. Because HYV seeds, high yield variety seeds, they need a plenty of water. And this number of tube wells led to decreasing the groundwater level very rapidly, very in a very fast manner. Groundwater in those states declined to a great level, and groundwater level, it can be maintained as long as the use of groundwater is less than the groundwater recharge. What is meant by groundwater recharge? It is increasing the groundwater level by different methods, different programs, that counter bunding, check dams, afforestation, that thing. So groundwater recharge was not focused in those states, but the use of groundwater was very much. So what is the important thing to recharge the groundwater? It is rainfall. Understand? What we see that? Rainfall. Understand? Rainfall is one important source for increasing the groundwater. It's a natural process. So that canals, streams, rivers, with that we can increase the groundwater. So here, water from these sources, that is the canals, streams, and rivers, slowly flows through various soil layers, and so that the soil gets time to collect water. When water flow very fast, then the problem starts here. So here in these states, they have not focused to recharge the groundwater, and they focused on using the groundwater very much. Instead, groundwater they used very much instead. So here, the fall in a groundwater level happened there. There the groundwater level decreased. Decrease in the groundwater level means water available, that is groundwater available for future generations, is very less, and it is essential to protect the groundwater to meet the future needs. Understand? So with the green revolution, one environmental problem started in these states, that is a decline in the groundwater levels. Understand? Here in Punjab, 10 districts out of 12 districts are suffering with low level of groundwater, and in Haryana, 9 districts out of 12 also suffering with a problem of falling groundwater. Now these states are suffering with a low level of groundwater. Experts in the groundwater level are saying that agriculture in Punjab in future becomes nothing. It could be danger. Instead, in future there may not be possible agriculture in Punjab because of the environmental damage from the past 30 years. In the last 30 years, the environment damaged to a great extent, that is using HYV seeds one, along with that high irrigation with a number of tube wells which extracted the groundwater much more. and pesticides, fertilizers also used in a high dosage, so the soil fertility also damaged. So 10 out of 12 districts in Punjab, 9 out of 12 districts of Haryana are suffering or facing with groundwater problem. This is understand that is shown in the figure here. Understand. Look at this figure. You will understand this one. Okay. What do you see in this figure? Rainwater is recharging the groundwater. The water which flows on the surface sinks into the soil and recharges the groundwater, right? And this groundwater is extracted, that means taken out by arranging the tube wells, right? So here number of tube wells are inserted and groundwater is extracted much more by tube wells. Whereas groundwater recharge, that means recharging the groundwater with rain was very less. That means the use of groundwater is much more than recharging the groundwater. So what will be the result? The level of the groundwater decreases. Instead, look at here, the groundwater level is given. Instead, what is this? Groundwater level area. It is up to here. Instead, that decreased slowly up to here. Understand? So it means that there the groundwater is decreasing. Understand? Due to the high usage by tube wells and recharge by rainfall is very less. Understand? In this way, water problems started in the northern states in the North India, that is Punjab, uh, then Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh. Understand? In these states, we see that there is a water problem. Understand? This is the problem with green revolution. The effects of the green revolution we are discussing. Second is that fertilizer problems. Understand? Manure and compost, which contain humus and living organisms, they release minerals as they decompose, right? The spoiled leaves and the dead living organisms slowly decomposes these things and generates minerals required for the soil, that is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. These are generated from the decomposition of dead living beings, dead what to call organisms, and spoiled leaves will create humus, and these dissolve into water and are immediately available to the plants. When fertilizers are provided, minerals are dissolving into water and immediately going to the plants. These minerals are not retained in the soil for a long time. When fertilizers are used, those fertilizers giving nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium to the plants immediately. There is no chance of these minerals retaining into the soil. Understand? So here we see that there is what to call there is a fertilizer problems. Understand? So that they may be leached from the soil and pollute the groundwater, rivers and lakes. Dear students, when chemical fertilizers are used, what are used? Chemical fertilizers are used. Minerals in chemical fertilizers are dissolving immediately in the water, and such water sinking into the soil, and soil is polluted. Further, it is polluting the groundwater as these chemical fertilizers joins with dissolves into the groundwater, and these chemical fertilizers are dissolved into the water so that such water is flowing to rivers and lakes. So river water, lake water, groundwater, soil is polluted. These chemical fertilizers not only killing the pests but also killing the bacteria which is useful for the soil. Understand? That's a problem with the fertilizers, especially chemical fertilizers. Understand? So here what it is, there these chemical fertilizers are removing the fertility of the soil and polluting the groundwater, rivers and lakes. Understand? And this is not one time. The chemical fertilizers are repeatedly used so that the soil is turning to less fertile. It is turning to less fertile. Understand? So that many microorganisms that live in the soil is polluted, is what to call it, decayed, what you call those are spoiled with the frequent and additional use of chemical fertilizers. When chemical fertilizers are used, every time the dosage of using the chemical fertilizers increases. Understand? That is, more and more chemical fertilizers should be used in the long run so that the expenditure for cultivating the crop also increases, and variety of nutrients which are naturally produced by some microorganisms also reduced because of high dosage of chemical fertilizers. So the green revolution, for a short period, it helped in increasing the food grains production, but in the long run it increasing the expenditure on crop cultivation to the farmers and leading to the soil degradation, right? So these are the effects of the green revolution. Understand? And further, environmental resources like soil fertility and groundwater, these are built by the nature over many years, right? Soil fertility is the natural one, groundwater level also natural one. So these are built up over many years, and once we destroy it, that soil fertility and groundwater, it's very difficult to regain and restore them. So like this, similar environmental imbalances are faced, what to call here with the green revolution. Understand? Right? That what you call this green revolution have created much more problem in the long run. Understand? or not? That what do we see here? Environmental resources, right? Those are what you call damaged much more. Understand? Here, the HIV seeds imbalances are being faced by other regions with a large scale use of HIV seeds. It's not only in the northern states. We see in other regions in India where HIV seeds are used, there also environmental problems are faced. Then how can we take care of the environment, and you guarantee that environment will be supporting to the future? Understand? This is a what one important question which is faced at present. Understand? Right? So my dear students, it is that the problems of the green revolution. Understand? That in a short we can say that it is a increase in production is the benefit. Okay. And what are the effects, negative effects? That is environmental effects. In that, water problem we have seen, and soil degradation we have seen, and there is unsustainability of the soil for future generation. Understand? Expenditure on cultivation of the crops also increases. Year by year, it becomes a burden to the farmers to cultivate. Understand? It may lead to the farmers committing suicide also, as a what to call the crop burden. That means crop expenditure increases. Understand? So this is the thing we see what to call the problems with the environment. Understand? So here I'll stop. In the next class, we'll see the third phase.